Hello everybody. Welcome to the No Stadium event at the Hobart Town Hall, 25th of February 2025. This event is being live streamed. We have some hundreds of people watching this event remotely from different areas of the state. Firstly, if you have an empty seat next to you, can you please put your hand up? And that will help people to find their way to seats. Now, I want to pay my sincere respects to the Palawa people, past and present. They occupied the land we meet upon today, and they occupied the area now known as Macquarie Point. They never gave up that land. I want to say a loud thank you to our new stadium team. I don't want to embarrass them by naming them, but this has been a significant event to organise, and as I said, it's being live streamed. And I want to welcome the hundreds of people who are watching this event remotely. And I also especially want to welcome those people that have travelled a long distance from the north of the state to participate in today's very important meeting. I want to thank our esteemed speakers, and especially Andrew Wilkie, MC, who will be managing this program and the constraints of time ruthlessly. I also want to acknowledge other esteemed public representatives that are here. Senator Nick McKim, Helen Burnett, MHA, Andrew Jenner, MHA, Rosalie Woodruff, MHA, Cassie O'Connor, MHC, and Meg Webb, MLC. So, in the context of this meeting, here's the question. What do we value about this city? What makes it magnificent? What do we face losing in the way of water views, uniqueness, heritage, solitude, open space, and the opportunity to respect those who died in wars? And of course, the specialness of Sullivan's Cove. Those are the big questions. Tasmania has for decades fought for, argued for, and even pleaded for AFL and AFLW teams. There is no doubt that by 2022, Tasmania had earned its place in the league. But in that year, 2022, the Tasmanian Premier had the community behind him in wanting those teams in the AFL. The community pinned its hopes on him as leader to deliver women's and men's teams. Premier Rockcliffe had a once-in-a-generation opportunity to bargain for those teams so they could participate in the national competition. And what did he do? What did the Premier do? He fluffed it. He secretly negotiated teams on terms that were disastrous. He agreed that the state had to build a stadium that it could not afford in a location that was utterly unsuitable. All of this was done in secret. And we must note it was all done at a time when people were not demanding or even asking for another stadium in Tasmania. At the very moment Tasmania needed a Premier who could lead the state to negotiate a team on good terms and who could deal powerfully and openly with the AFL, all we had was Jeremy Rockcliffe to bargain for us. And the Premier has proved himself an utterly impotent negotiator for Tasmania, and his impotence was made worse by his secrecy. His epic failure was that he could have been open with the community, told us of the AFL's bullying demands, and had the entire state backing him as he stood firm to the AFL. But what did he do? He caved into the AFL. They wrote the agreement, and it was all done in secret. He squandered a once-in-a-generation opportunity. And then, of course, he went to an election in early 2024, by when the stadium was a proposal. And what happened? The result? He went backwards. And then he blamed us for mistruths. And he lied to us about the cost and the height of his proposed stadium. And he blustered along. He called us blockers. We are in the age of the authoritarian, where resistance is asserted to be futile, where a project such as this is projected as inevitable, where opposing groups are demonised, and where the truth has no value to the government of the day. It's an age where integrity to this government means successfully avoiding being caught out. In fact, the opposition to this proposed stadium is very powerful, as shown by this public meeting and by this awesome panel of wonderful speakers who are exemplars of integrity and public interest advocacy. So here's the message for Premier Rockliff and the AFL. We will not be silenced. We will not be bullied. We are angry. We have truth and economics and reality on our side. We have the Gruen report obtained by the Premier himself vindicating our opposition to this crazy project. And most importantly, we have a vision for the site that includes desperately needed housing. Do you all remember the odious Gunns pulp mill proposal and the equally odious Ralphs Bay Canal estate? Both of these were projects of state incompetence. And just as the opponents of those projects prevailed, so will we. We will prevail. Before I hand over to Andrew Wilkie to guide us through this special event, I want to draw everyone's attention to the QR codes on the tables on the landing. There's a link to the shop and to the donate location and to our No New Stadium website. We really need to help fund our campaign. We have a long year ahead of us, especially with hearings in the Planning Commission. The government has endless resources to peddle its lies, so please help by donating. I also want to draw particular attention to the link that takes you to the Gruen Explainer on our website with answers to frequently asked questions and chapter summaries. It's a fantastic piece of work by the No New Stadium team. If only Premier Rockliff would read it. Lastly, there's a sign-up link to sign up to join No New Stadium. I encourage you, if you haven't already, to join our campaign. I now hand you over to Andrew Wilkie. Thank you, Andrew.
And thank you, Roland, for your leadership on this. Yes, I'm Andrew Wilkie, and I'm the Master of Ceremonies for this event. I'm also, of course, the independent federal member for the electorate of Clark. Now, I warn you, I'm going to be running a very tight ship. We only have until 1 o'clock, and I'm mindful that there are people here who have ducked out of work during their lunch hour. So I do want to stick to that 1 o'clock deadline, please. And we've got a lot of ground to cover. We've got 5 excellent speakers, and at the end we need to have enough time to vote on a motion that I'll be putting to the meeting. Now, although I am not one of the speakers formally for today, I do want to put it very clearly on the public record where I stand on the stadium. And in my mind, it's as simple as this. The community do not want it, the community do not need it, and the community cannot afford it. And I have said as much personally and directly to Gillan McLachlan and to Andrew Dillon, and I have said as much repeatedly personally to the Prime Minister when I have urged him in the strongest possible terms that not 1 cent of federal money should be going to the building of the stadium. Now, I want you to reflect on the following motion It won't be amended. It'll simply be a case of at the end of this meeting, I'll ask you to vote yes or no on it. And the motion is, this meeting calls on the Tasmanian Government to A, immediately abandon its Macquarie Point Stadium proposal before any more public monies are wasted on this unachievable project, and B, renegotiate the team agreement with the AFL to deliver AFL and AFLW teams while reclaiming the state's sovereignty over decisions regarding where and when AFL and AFLW sporting facilities are to be built or upgraded. So reflect on that motion, please, as you hear our speakers, and I'll go straight to our first speaker, which is Vica Bayley. I don't think I need any introductions, frankly, for any of these speakers, but I have been told to say a few words. So Vica Bayley is, of course, one of Tasmania's leading environmental activists and has been for many, many years. In 2023, he was elected on a countback to the House of Assembly following the resignation of Cassie O'Connor. And Vica was re-elected in 2024, and since 2024 he has served as the Deputy Greens leader.
Well, thank you, Andrew, and thank you also to Our Place for organising today's meeting, and to all of you today for coming along or tuning in. This is indeed a defining issue for today, with implications for decades to come. The cost of this stadium will be passed from generation to generation, as will the worsening health, education and housing issues that continue under-addressed as our government and our taxpayer dollars are focused on a vanity project we neither want or need. Could I start by acknowledging we meet on the lands of the Muwinina, a people who did not survive invasion and whose rights, hopes and aspirations live on through the Tasmanian Aboriginal community. I pay my respects to Palawa elders past and present. The Mac Point Stadium has many facets that leaves me shaking my head with shock, scratching it for logic or hanging it deeply in shame. The treatment of those Aboriginal hopes and aspirations and their investment in a physical space that can serve as a memorial and a symbol for making things right is one of the lowest and the saddest. The Truth and Reconciliation Park, once planned for Mac Point, combined prominence, scale, accessibility and connection to create a space for remembrance, celebration, learning and hope. Now, exchanged for greed, this opportunity and the people working to achieve it have been demoted. Now, an Aboriginal culturally informed zone is to be jammed between a highway and a stadium, with some of its paltry area further eroded between the publication of the draft and the final stadium master plans, swapped out for cricket nets. But what should we expect? If Premier Rockcliffe cannot even consult his own cabinet, his treasury or the Tasmanian people about a Mac Point stadium before inking a dud deal with the AFL, including liability for every dollar of inevitable cost overruns, why would we think the agreed development master plan with its housing, science, heritage and truth and reconciliation will carry any weight? Indeed, in ditching that plan to get to this point, so the land would stay vacant, we, the taxpayer, have paid out a Melbourne-based developer to not deliver housing on one part of the site. This is a true Tasmanian tragedy in the suite of Tasmanian land use tragedies. I, like many of you, have been involved in numerous land use conflicts where we, the community, battle to combat inappropriate private development on public land. Choppers, canal developments, cable car, zip line, the list is long, ongoing, and the common theme is the values of the land and the fact that it should not be developed at all. But we all agree, I reckon to a person, that Mac Point is a huge opportunity as a brownfields development site on the doorstep of the CBD and within a stone's throw of the waterfront. It's just a matter of getting it right, and the stadium was wrong from the start. But here we are. Tragedy, yes, but now our reality. Our reality, together with the worst education results of any Australian state. A housing crisis that has an ever-growing wait list with people waiting longer and longer for their human rights to be met. And a healthcare crisis where the stories are harrowing and the costly impact significant on patients and healthcare workers alike. This, plus a budget that will see the deficit for the current year blow out by $500 million to $1.3 billion, and public debt grow to a staggering $9.6 billion by 2028, costing us, you, the taxpayer, $500 million each year in interest payments. Dr. Nicholas Gruen's independent analysis of Mac Point Stadium was sobering reading and seemed not even read by the Liberal and Labor parties, dismissed outright or with deafening silence. Already displaying the hallmarks of mismanagement and likely to cost well over $1 billion, Dr. Gruen deconstructed both the cost estimates and the process, and his condemnation was clear. Meanwhile, just recently, in response to a request from the Planning Commission, another drop of project documents rings alarm bell after alarm bell about the traffic, pedestrian, heritage, cost and other critical issues that the Planning Commission and the Parliament categorically reject this project. Despite so-called mitigation by landscaping measures, impact on protected sightlines at the cenotaph is confirmed as high to very high. It calculates that the until now uncosted expense of moving the goods shed at $6.5 million, an underestimate according to Dr. Gruen. It confirms the abandonment of enabling infrastructure like the Collins Street pedestrian bridge, meaning pedestrian safety on the existing Davey Street footpath would require, and I quote, an additional 6.2 metres, meaning the existing parking bays plus traffic lane, end quote, on Davey Street. Transport stats rely on active transport, including the Greater Hobart cycling plan, but Erica Betts has got it in for bike lanes. On game day, if you're travelling from the Eastern Shore, the Tasman Bridge will exceed capacity, and that's the information that the government did provide. On other Commission requests for additional info, it got the middle finger. The Mac Point Development Corporation either arguing the toss or pointing to existing reports. While the project of state significance process is not community friendly and is stacked in favour of the developer by abandoning long-standing planning rules, we're heartened the Planning Commission's push for more info. Given what's been delivered or not, it's impossible to envisage a credible process giving approval to this stadium. But then it's over to us in the Parliament. On that, can I acknowledge the work of my colleagues in Parliament, both those on the stage and in the audience, including my Green colleagues, Cassie, Rosalie, Helen and Senator Nick McKim, who's used his position in Canberra to push for transparency on the federal contribution and its GST status. Tassie deserves a footy team, and we have done for decades. There is no national competition without us. We have stadiums where AFL has been played for years. We don't need another one. With one of the oldest, sickest, least literate and least secure populations in the country, liable for skyrocketing debt and more economic shocks to come, we simply cannot afford a stadium. We can't afford to be blackmailed by the AFL. The stadium is in the wrong place and it comes from the wrong place. If those land use conflicts have demonstrated one thing, it's that Tasmanians will defend their place, stand up for their children's inheritance and back right before wrong. The stadium is a dud, done badly with dire consequences, and that's why we, collectively, will defeat it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vica, you're a gem, and I didn't waste my vote. The next speaker is Richard Flanagan. Richard is obviously one of Tasmania's leading intellectuals and, according to The Economist, is considered by many to be the finest Australian novelist of his generation. Indeed, his novels are published in at least 42 countries, and he has received numerous literary honours for his works, including the Commonwealth Prize, the Man Brooker Prize, and the Prime Minister's Prize for Fiction. Moreover, and you may not be as well aware of this, as a journalist, Richard has written for many national and international publications, including Le Monde, the New York Times, and the New Yorker. In other words, Richard thinks big and understands stuff like few others.
Thank you, Andrew, and it's an honour to be on this stage with such doughty fighters for Tasmania and Tasmanians. The Premier likes dismissing those who are opposed to the stadium as anti-jobs. I am not anti-jobs, I am anti-lies. The truth is that the stadium was always going to cost far, far more than the Premier's lie of a $375 million cap, that it was never going to employ thousands, and it was never going to be a boon to Tasmania. The truth is that Tasmanians are already being sacked to pay for this stadium with the so-called efficiency dividend, as the crisis in health, education, housing and policing worsens daily because of the ever more destructive attempts by the government to balance its collapsing budget with the need to pay for an ever more expensive stadium. Dr. Nicholas Gruen exposed the truth behind the lies. The stadium will cost a minimum $1.1 billion, and more likely, as he shows, as much as $1.7 billion, with a net return to Tasmanians of just 44 cents in the dollar. In the contract Jeremy Rockcliffe so recklessly signed with the AFL, clause 21.4 clearly and directly specifies Tasmania is responsible. Tasmanian taxpayers are responsible for all cost overruns. We Tasmanian taxpayers are up for every last cent owing, no matter how much this stadium blows out. Put this into context. Tasmania's budget this year is $9.7 billion. Tasmania's total debt is projected to blow out, according to budget papers cited by Dr. Gruen, to over $17 billion within the next 2 years. There is no pot of gold to build this stadium, no endless treasure chest, just a financial situation that is disastrous. Worse, as Sol Eslake's report made clear, the only solution is cuts in public services and more taxes. That's stadium job cuts. That's stadium taxes every Tasmanian will be paying. Nor are there the thousands of jobs the Premier routinely lies about being created in construction, and which his official echo chamber, Dreaming Dean Winter, consistently repeats. Even his own consultant, Left Field Project Solutions, here on page 13, admits that at the peak of construction, the stadium will have a workforce of just 400. Half of whom will be mainlanders. The report finds that this will push Hobart rents up by 1.1%. Not new homes being built at Mac Point as should be, but a housing crisis worsened. Not more Tasmanians working, but Tasmanians losing their jobs for mainlanders. If there's a 50% illiteracy rate in Tasmania, there is clearly a 100% illiteracy rate in the Tasmanian Liberal government. Because they don't seem to have read Gruen. They don't even read their own consultant's report. Here is this from stadium consultant KPMG's latest report, and you can find it on page 15. It says, if existing schools and hospitals are insufficient to meet the needs of Tasmanians, the benefits of building a new school or hospital will be very large, and almost certainly larger than the benefits of an equivalent investment in a stadium. That's the Premier's own economic consultant. Page 15. Read it, Mr. Rockcliffe, read it. That the Premier, with the glee of an adolescent online shopping with his parents' credit card, bought a stadium, doesn't make his purchase wise or right. The AF deal is a Trumpian cruelty imposed by an AFL that doesn't care and signed by a Premier who doesn't think. The stadium eats Tasmania's very future. It is a destroyer of our society if it is allowed to go ahead. Now Jeremy Rockcliffe, the Elmer Fudd of Tasmanian politics, has to decide if AFL CEO Andrew Dillon is the Premier of Tasmania or if he is. But this is a weak Premier. This is a cowardly Premier. This is a deceitful Premier who from the beginning has not had the courage to tell the Tasmanian people the truth about the stadium. Every day I walk the domain past homeless people, and I am ashamed to be Tasmanian. Every day I hear stories of people suffering because we have the worst and worsening health system in the nation. And I am ashamed. I am a Booker Prize winner and there is a 50% illiteracy rate. And I am ashamed. And I am most ashamed that the only answer our government can make to any of these terrible problems that it should be addressing is the immense folly of a stadium that will only worsen all Tasmanians' lives in its disastrous financial consequences. We need someone in the Liberal government with the courage of these people sitting here next to me, with the guts to say to the AFL, we Tasmanians run Tasmania, not the AFL. To say the truth, we cannot afford this stadium. To say to the AFL, we will decide if and when a stadium will be built. We will decide what sort of stadium we will build, and we will decide where the stadium is sited. And until a time that will be of our choosing, you will not take our team from us. Our team will play at our 2 existing stadia, and we are supporting that team with the most generous state support of any sporting team in Australian history. And if you want to fight about these things, bring it on. Bring it on. Because we will fight and we will fight and we will fight and we will win. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Our next speaker is Craig Garland. Now, Craig is a fisherman and a passionate environmentalist. He was elected as the independent member for Braddon in the House of Assembly in 2024. Now, although I understand Craig does now possess a suit, there's no risk whatsoever of Craig ever forgetting his roots or failing to bring powerful common sense to governance in the state.
I might start by saying that the AFL has been pissing me off forever. Not only have they tampered with our rules, they've gone into Greater Western Sydney, the Gold Coast, not traditional football heartlands. This state here has given the best footballers in the nation, and they've given a great lot of enjoyment to all of those people on the mainland. Now, the other thing I've been hearing is the justifications for this stadium, and they're quite absurd. One is that the 18 presidents of the other football clubs voted on giving us a side on the contingents of a roof stadium. Nowhere else in the country has that happened. So for the benefit of half of those AFL sides to come down here and play under a roof stadium because it's too cold, it's too wet, for God's sake, it's a winter sport. The other one is that the high-profile footballers like Buddy Franklin, if they were based in Launceston, the first thing they'd be doing after the game is jumping in a taxi and coming down to Hobart in the big capital. Well, if they're the sort of players that we want to recruit to represent our state, they're not the ones we want. And there are plenty of footballers in this state that would walk across broken glass just to represent this state. I know, I was a footballer. I had a fishing rod in one hand and a football in the other for my whole life. I worshipped football. It was everything to me. The community, 4,000 people would roll up to the Oval at Wynyard when I was a kid. We had to sit on the bike track. You know, what they've done to football is disgusting, is shocking, and to put us in this situation, to hold us over a barrel, to say, oh, we'll give you a side as long as you throw yourself into a heap more debt and build a stadium that no one wants, that is absurd. I'd like to highlight too, before the AFL went into Launceston, it was the poorest recruiting area in the country. Within a short time frame, it became one of the richest and still is today. What it means to be able to go along and watch your stars play on that oval and then go along to your local club, commit yourself. Football is all about application and opportunity. Basing this stadium down here is denying the Northwest Coast that access to get caught up and wrapped up in that affordable afternoon's entertainment that everybody should be able to do on a Saturday. So they're not thinking about the Northwest. For us to come down here, the other day I was a bit late booking a room. The two rooms that I could get, one was $840, the other was $500. They expect us Northwest Coasters, the most marginal electorate in this state, to come up with thousands of dollars just to come down here to watch football. That is wrong. It is basically wrong. And Jeremy Rockcliffe, being a Northwest Coaster, should be ashamed of himself. I don't know really what else to say except to the AFL to stop stuffing us around, stop dividing this community. Let's use York Park. We've got the existing stadium there. We're not asking people to come down and play on gravel. We want our side. For all those young people out there that haven't got a job, haven't got a direction, football club will feed you, it will take you in, you'll mix with other people, and if you apply yourself and you're given that opportunity, anyone on this planet can be a footballer. I know that, whether you're short, thin, dark, smart, stupid, there is a place for everyone on the Australian rules football field. Let's get it right. Let's start right now. We can start tomorrow. We can start playing in that stadium up there at York Park. So what if you can't get parking down here at Belle Reeve? Work around it, you know. All these things, it's not a perfect world, and if you're looking for perfection at every angle, you won't go anywhere. So give us our stadium, give our young opportunity to get caught up in that hype and progress their lives. Thank you.
You know, the toughest job in politics at the federal, state and local level is to find yourself the Speaker after Richard Flanagan. But didn't he rise to the occasion? Our next speaker is Kristie Johnston. Kristie has been in public life for some time now, having first been elected to Glenorchy City Council in 2011. But it was in 2014 that Kristie really made a name for herself when she was elected Glenorchy Mayor with an enormous personal vote on a promise duly delivered to clean out and to clean up the council. Kristie was re-elected Mayor in 2018, elected to the House of Assembly in 2021 and re-elected in 2024. In other words, Kristie knows all about public administration and quickly recognises a gross failure of governance when she sees it.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you for having me here today. The Groom report confirmed what we already knew or strongly suspected. The stadium's costs are grossly underestimated, its benefits overstated, and it's already showing all the hallmarks of mismanagement. And today's EMRS poll released tells us that 59% of Tasmanians oppose the stadium. The experts, as we know, have been lining up to tell us that this stadium does not stack up, that the stadium is a bad idea and that we simply cannot afford it. So you would think that with this government's track record of stuff-ups after stuff-ups, that they'd be ready to listen. You would think that common sense would prevail, but not this government. With their trademark arrogance and of subservience to the AFL, they're going to stick to their dud deal. They want to leave future generations of Tasmanians lumped with an almighty bill to pay. The expert economists this government is choosing to ignore are Dr Nicholas Gruen, Mr Saul Eslake and Dr Graham Wells. They are also ignoring KPMG, who have been commissioned by Macquarie Point Development Corporation. Even KPMG, on behalf of MPDC, admit it doesn't stack up. They can't even confect a case that sees a stadium bring a positive return on investment. Even the Treasury Department says this stadium is a significant budget risk. And if that's not bad enough, they've snubbed the RSL, the TSO and the Tasmanian Aboriginal community. They're also ignoring a significant number of members of the crossbench and Legislative Council who are here today, who oppose the stadium after listening to their constituencies and their communities. But most importantly, this government is also choosing to ignore you, the people. But you might ask, who is missing from this big list of voices of opposition? Who is conspicuous by their absence? Well, it's the opposition, of course, the Tasmanian Labor Party. Remember that party, the alleged opposition, the Labor Party who went to the last election opposing the stadium. Are they here by chance today? Can we see them? No. It took Labor less than 2 months after the election to do an Olympic gold medal winning backflip and drop their opposition to the stadium like a hot potato. They seem perfectly happy to go along with the government's fairy tale. The stadium will only cost Tasmanians $375 million and not a red cent more. The problem is, of course, we all know the costs are going to be many times much more. And we know that Tasmanians are on the hook for all of it. So, when do we pull the pin on this particular folly? And will Labor wait until it's too late for them to act? Will they only act when the $375 million promise is broken and we have a partially constructed stadium that comes with $1 billion price tag to finish and with a laughing stock of a nation? Or will they end this madness now, before it goes any further? They have been very vocal about the Spirit's debacle, but why won't they bring their voices to this? A debacle on a much grander scale, but one that they can prevent. All but one. All but one crossbencher is putting the best interest of Tasmanians first by opposing this stadium. But the Labor opposition is missing in action. Now, I know we've lost faith in the major parties because sadly neither party seems interested in sound management, whether it's the economy, the environment or any number of issues. They're interested in pandering to their financial backers because their main concerns are maintaining power and self-preservation. But at the end of the day, they need your vote. So we need to maintain the rage. Let them see your power now. It is time to hit both parties where it hurts. For the Liberals, it's the fear of losing government, and for Labor, it's the fear of continuing their historic term on the opposition benches. I urge you to write to every Liberal and Labor member. Particularly, call on Labor to try and justify to you why they are doing nothing and letting this happen. Don't let them continue to hide behind their Liberal colleagues. The Liberal government may be a lost cause because they are so firmly within the clenches of the AFL. But Labor can, and they should, oppose this stadium. They can use their numbers combined with the crossbench to put an end to this fiasco now. If they want us to believe they are a credible alternative government, then they need to stop rubber stamping stupid ideas and projects like this. They need to stop being Liberal light, and they need to start acting like an opposition. And my call out to Labor is, there is no better way to do this than by standing up to the AFL bullies, opposing the stadium, and finally putting Tasmanians first. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristie. Our final speaker is Senator Jacqui Lambie. Before politics, Jacqui, of course, was a soldier in the Australian Regular Army for almost 11 years, but famously was elected to the Australian Parliament under the Palmer United Party banner in 2013, but soon went solo and became independent. Since then, Jacqui has established and led the Jacqui Lambie Network and was re-elected to the Senate in 2016 and 2019. To say Jacqui is outspoken is an understatement. So hold on to your seats and stand by, because I suspect Jacqui has had a gutful of this stadium.
Yeah, laughers. I'm beyond a bloody gutful, mate. I'm absolutely beyond it. I cannot believe the ignorance of the Liberal Party. I'll leave Labor out for the time being, I'll come back to them. But what blows me away, somebody tell these guys they're not sitting in their lounge room with their choo-choo chain going around a table and playing on the Monopoly board. They are playing with our goddamn bloody money. And somebody tell them, when it comes to economics in Tasmania, we are nearly on our bloody knees. We are nearly on our knees. We don't need a new stadium. This is absolutely a joke. I can assure you, there is nothing more than pisses me off like you, Craig, when we have a very viable option out there, and it is York Park. It is York Park. Why should my families up there on the northwest coast and over the east coast of Tasmania have to travel so far to come and watch their football down in Hobart? First of all, let me give you a reality check. They'll be lucky if they can afford the fuel. Then they've got to pay for the tickets. And I'll tell you something, you're sure as hell you are not staying in a hotel. You are driving home with your kids in a car and putting them at risk at 10 o'clock of a night after a game just to give your kids some opportunity to see their sporting heroes. That's what you are doing. So not only are you wasting money, you are putting people's lives at risk. That is what you are doing. That AFL Academy for our kids, Launceston is the centre. It is fair for everybody. And AFL, somebody tell them the biggest AFL crowd is in the north of the state. You want to make it a war? I'll bloody make it one. That is the reality. That is the reality. But this is reality. As an adult in the room, you must prioritise when you have a bucket of money, and that bucket of money must go to those who need it the most. We still have a 50% illiteracy rate in this bloody state for our kids. How is that going to build our future? We have a health system that is beyond on its knees. And my God, don't wait and get into a GP quick enough. We haven't got psychologists out there for our kids to see. They're waiting 8 or 10 weeks, and you wonder why we have a whole out there. Well, we have a whole generation that have mental health illnesses out there because they can't get in to see anyone. Whatever happened to helping our generation below? This is not fair to them. We're going to leave them with a massive debt. But more importantly, what really blows me away, I know that many of you don't know this, probably none of you. I went and seen the AFL. I thought, fuck yous. I'll be honest with you. I'm coming to see you. I'm going to sit across the table for you. 45 minutes I was there. What an embarrassment to the AFL. Guess what the AFL's worried about? Might put a little bit of dent in their brand. Oh, thank you for telling me that, because now I'm coming. You are going to get a dent in your brand because I am coming. What you have asked us to do down here, this is how it went down. This is how it went down. Peter Gutwin went down there and they decided on a few frothies and got half friggin' pissed that they're going to bring this stadium with us. They're going to have a stadium with a roof on it. Nobody else has ever been asked to do that. They come down here with an offer, the AFL. I can tell you now that they did not think in their wildest dreams that these Tasmanian idiot politicians would even accept. They walked all over the top of them. They don't care, those other 18 clubs down there, and I'll tell you why. Because when it comes to picking up those rookies, we're going to have a good hit for those first 5 or 6 years. They want to blow us out. They don't want us in there full stop. So they come down with this demand. Right, when it comes to the draft picks, we're going to get nice draft picks for those first 5 or 6 years that we are in. Those 18 teams, they're going to sit back. They're going to sit back. It's not fair to them. So they don't give a stuff whether Tasmania's in it or not. And that is the truth of the matter. They don't give a stuff. Right, so they come down here with this big, yeah, let's do this, guys, let's do this, thinking that they didn't know how stupid, as we do, how stupid these Liberal and Labor state governments are down here. These people, how stupid they actually are. They fell for the shit. They fell for the shit at our expense. And that is what is going on here. They fell for it, they took it, and this is the situation that we're in. Well, I say this. We have a federal election coming up. Yeah, we have a federal election coming up, Anthony Albanese, and you're still not hearing it from me. It damaged you in the state election, mate. So not only are you coming for the AFL, I'm coming for you, because I know how close those lower house seats are down here. I know how close they are, mate. I'm very aware of that. So I am asking you, Mr Albanese, I'm simply asking you this. He needs to quarantine that $240 million of the Australian taxpayers' money until the AFL and the state government go back to the table and renegotiate that deal. He needs to do that because it has been made quite clear from both of those reports, first of all, Tasmania cannot afford this. We cannot afford this. Secondly, we don't need this. We have a perfectly good ground up in the York Park. So I say, there's been no transparency. It was done over some frothies. The big boys got excited there, just normal stuff here, big excited. Great, let's get this stadium with a roof. No thought process behind it. We fell lock, stock and barrel when the AFL pulled one over our eyes, thinking there's no way Tasmanians will buy into this. Well, Jesus Christ. That's what they were thinking. How embarrassing for us down here. They just pulled one straight after it and we took it. Right? Hook, line and sinker, we took it. At what price? At the price of our services, because that's the price we'll be paying. Not to mention the price that our generations in the future will be paying our own kids. So I simply say this to you, Premier, and I make this very clear. I want to reiterate what I said to you 12 months. When it comes to that bloody stadium, mate, you can stick it fair where it fits. Thank you.
Well, I don't think you'll get a better lineup of speakers in this state. Now, we're almost at the end of proceedings, and shortly I'll put the motion and put that to the vote, although I will share with you a fun fact, which some of you may not be aware of. The capacity of Bellerive Stadium, seated and standing, is approximately 20,000 people. The capacity of the proposed stadium at Macquarie Point is 23,000 people. And with that in mind, I'll put the motion. Okay, so the motion before the meeting is, this meeting calls on the Tasmanian Government to A, immediately abandon its Macquarie Point Stadium proposal before any more public monies are wasted on this unachievable project, and B, renegotiate the team agreement with the AFL to deliver AFL and AFLW teams while reclaiming the state's sovereignty over decisions regarding where and when AFL and AFLW sporting facilities are to be built or upgraded. All those in favour, raise your hand. Hands down. Against, raise your hand. Carried. Now, I understand that there's over 300 people viewing this meeting remotely, bringing our total number to well over 500. So that's a tremendous achievement. And I understand, Roland, that people who are viewing this remotely can offer a view on that motion through the QR code?
No, they can just view the
Okay.
motion.
So this may be the first public meeting of this type that's going to run on time. Unfortunately, there is no time for questions and answers, and I make the point again, there are people here who do need to get back to their work. So I will take this opportunity, first of all, to thank Roland for your leadership and your team. And I'll also thank the speakers, of course, and I think we should give them a round of applause. Vica, Richard, Craig, Kristie and Jacqui. Now, I will also take this opportunity to give a plug for another public meeting. It's the Scrap the DAP meeting. That's the Development Assessment panel that would take development decision-making out of the hands of local government. There's a public meeting on that organised by PMAT, which is the Planning Matters Alliance, Tuesday the 4th of March at 6:30 p.m. at the Moona Arts Centre. So that's the Planning Matters Alliance meeting on scrapping the DAP bill, Tuesday the 4th of March, 6:30 p.m. at the Moona Arts Centre. Now there's one more really important thing to do, and we want to get a photo of all of this. So what I'm going to ask the panel to do is carefully stand up and face the banner without stepping backwards. So just move back against the plants and do be careful. And I believe the organisers have a photographer lined up.
No new stadium! No new stadium! Arms up! No new stadium! No new stadium! And down Vica. Okay, thanks everyone.
Well, we'll round it up on time. Okay. So that's a wrap. More than 500 people participated today. It was a great success. It's a credit to all of you who have made it here today. And I'll see you on the barricades next time. Oh, and there's a bucket on the way out if anyone is able to contribute a small donation or a gold coin to help cover the cost of these events. Thank you.